effectively, if we hold the deal for 4 or 5 years, maybe they've gotten on average 7-8% on their money along the way, right? These payments every 90 days. And then we sell it for the big appreciation. And that's when the catch up happens. And our whole thing on that is typically we want to 2 to 3x their money. So if someone puts $100,000 with us, we'd like to hand them back somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 when we sell the property.
Hey, welcome to Uncommon State of Mind, where we debate different ways to leverage your next investment to create time freedom, legacy impact, and generational wealth so you can live that uncommon life. But in order to do that, you must be uncommon. My name is Joey, aka Mr. J Mays.
Hey, and I'm AD, also known as AD the Fly Room.
Awesome. So today we have a special guest here with us today. I'm gonna go ahead and let AD open up and tell us a little bit about Brandon.
Yeah, we got Brandon Locaso on the show today. I first came across him on Instagram. Thank God for social media. Saw he was doing some cool things. A little bit about Brandon. He's a real estate entrepreneur with 20 years of experience in Southern California. Started out as a sales agent in 2007 and later earned his broker license. He launched a house flipping business in 2012, and then he also co-founded a real estate development company in 2017. In 2020, he began investing in long-term rentals. He ended up growing his portfolio to 53 doors worth $12 million. Now he aims to acquire $150 million in multifamily assets within 3 years. Brandon is also the host of the High Stakes Deals podcast, and he also plans to kick off a real estate meetup in LA.
Yep. So he is, highly decorated for sure. Hey, Brandon, we're happy to have you on the show, man. How are you?
Hey, hell of an intro. Appreciate that, guys. And I'm only going to get to my goals for that $150 million by being uncommon. So this is the place to start. Let's go.
There we go.
But before we even get to anything else, you've been in real estate for 20 years. Dude, okay. How old are you, if I may ask? Because you look like you're about 20.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know it might be the sauna. I hit the sauna quite a bit, try to stay hydrated. But no, I'm 37, actually, believe it or not, 37. Okay, I've got 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and one on the way. So,
congrats.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I got into real estate right when I was 18 years old. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where it was like maybe go to college, but I was an okay student at best in high school, and kind of fell into the loan biz, and the rest was history from there.
I see. Okay,
well, cool. Well, that kind of like transitions us into our first questions. Like, so, what was and you gave us a little bit about it, just your background and how you kind of fell into that, but like, was there any like additional influence, or what was the actual decision, or what drove the decision for you to really get into real estate?
It's funny. So I grew up in a real estate family. So my dad's an agent. He's actually a broker, owns a RE/MAX office. My mom's an agent. 2 of my uncles are agents and brokers. My grandmother was in the business. So it was kind of almost in a way destined I'd end up in real estate.
Right.
But it wasn't directly because of that. So I was, like I said, I just graduated high school. I was working at a car wash changing oil, and it was hot as hell in the summer out in Temecula, and I'm getting hot oil on myself every day. And one of my buddies comes to me and he's like, hey, my older brother's working at this loan company, and they do mortgages, and they make a bunch of calls all day and get commissions. And I was just like, first of all, what's a mortgage? And second of all, I don't really care. As long as it gets us away from the oil and into an office, I'm like, let's roll and let's give it a try, So
yeah.
It was really kind of funny. And then, obviously from there over time, I had migrated from just doing loans to then into real estate, and kind of brought the connection full circle with the family and started taking off from there.
That's awesome, because you really got a chance to like get into the nuts and bolts of mortgages before you dived into like actual real estate. So you understood that world prior to getting into actual doing deals. So that's probably an interesting perspective to have.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was nice to kind of see that part of it, because I feel like a lot of agents, if they don't understand the financing, it can kind of be a disservice to the clients, and it makes navigating transactions sometimes more difficult. But having that understanding of all the numbers and loan programs and everything, it definitely gave me a little bit of an edge. And I thought I'd stay as a loan officer for a while, but 2007, 8 came,
Yeah.
Nobody was getting loans done. I mean, we'd gotten spoiled because when I first got in, it was '05. And so it was one of those things where
The wild
you'd
West.
call the appraiser, hey, I need this house to appraise for 600,000 because my client wants to pull out more cash. And it just kind of got done, right? And I didn't know any better. That was just how we were trained and how everybody did it. And I'll never forget one day I'm talking to an appraiser and he's like, I can't get the value. And I'm just like, I didn't even understand what that meant, right? I'm like 20 years old. I'm going, yeah. I'm like, what? Come again? Should I call somebody else? He's like, nobody's going to get the value. And I'm like, wow, okay, something's changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That never happened before.
Yeah.
So now, I know you raise money, correct?
Correct.
So are you technically like a real estate syndicator?
Yeah. So
Okay,
we started
cool.
off buying apartments with our own money. And then, which usually happens, you run out of your own money. I mean, most of us do. It'd be a good problem to have if you didn't run out of your own money, but I suppose. But we started running out of our own money, my partners and I. And so we did our first syndication about 2 years ago, raised $1.2 million to buy a $3 million property up north. And then we just completed another syndication we did last year. And we're looking at our third one. And our third one, hopefully, knock on wood, will be much bigger here. Got an offer in on something right now. We don't know if it's going to come together, but we'll see.
Okay, cool. So most of our audience are actually beginning investors. So for those who may not know, can you please explain what real estate syndication is?
Yeah, so it's really just a term to describe pooling money together. So when you do syndication, a lot of times when you start off, you go to what's called a 506B fund. And that's when you can raise money from friends and family. And because you're raising money from people you know, they don't have to be accredited investors. So it can be somebody that makes any amount of money for a living. Now, you're not allowed to advertise. Again, it has to be people you know. But, you can fill a relatively smaller fund quickly with 50,000, 25,000 at a time from people that aren't high net worth individuals. So, for example, when we started ours, that was exactly what we did. We did the 506B. And then, our second one was a 506C where we could actually go out and advertise. We were more restricted with having to go to high net worth, or not even exactly high net worth, but people that are accredited, right? So, somebody that's accredited means they have to make $200,000 a year or $300,000 a year if they're married, or they have to have a net worth of $1 million. But those are mostly mechanics. I guess that aside, going back to your question, the whole idea behind syndication is pretty simple, right? It's like if the three of us, we're all going to buy properties separately, right? And we only have so much money to do that. And the level of properties that we're able to buy are going to be a certain level because it's just with our own money. We're able to pool our resources together. And now we could all own an equitable share of this bigger deal that might have a potential to have a much bigger payoff in the future, and might in a lot of ways be a lot more secure because it is a bigger deal. It can afford better management. It spins off more cash. And so there's really, kind of just a big demand really when you get into it for people that want to pool their money together and get involved in these larger transactions.
And that's something that we talk about a lot, is pretty much having people pool their money together and get into transactions as such, because, that's where, you spread out the liability. As you said already, you can get into bigger and better properties. So that's pretty awesome that you guys decided to go down that route.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing. One of the things that we found was that a lot of people, even people that are real estate, guys and gals, they might already have a couple real estate investments, but a lot of them are teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, whatever they do for a living, mailmen, construction workers, but they have their thing they do, and they don't have time to be a real estate expert. And so they're interested in real estate. They might already have some real estate, but they can't exactly go out and do what we're doing and find a 50-unit deal to buy, right?
Right.
And so the attraction for them, if they can get behind a solid syndicator that knows their stuff and is honest and has a nice program, is that they can kind of ride into that deal with them without having to be the one, driving the bus.
Right.
Okay, cool. Quick question. So for your properties, do you guys have an in-house management team, or do you have third-party property management?
Yeah, so we're sort of a hybrid. We use third-party property managers, but we're very particular with how we manage the managers. And we drive some of them crazy. We've had to fire some managers. We've had some managers quit. But we'll put together a business plan up front when we buy a property. We'll interview a bunch of managers. Once we select a manager, we'll make sure that everybody adopts the business plan. We'll have certain KPIs as we go through the deal, how many properties, how many units we want to renovate if it's a renovation play, how much rent we're expecting to collect each quarter, what our numbers are. And we stay very, very, in tune with them. So I look at it kind of more of a way as like we sort of co-manage our properties.
Yeah.
The benefit to having the third-party property management company is that if a toilet goes out in the middle of the night on Saturday, I'm not getting a call.
Right.
So, if someone needs to pay the rent in an office, I don't have to be up in, Sacramento where they can pay rent. So the third-party PM is really a good foundational person that's there, boots on the ground, that can kind of take care of 70, 80% of the stuff. But when it comes to some of the bigger ticket items, like, for example, we do a lot of renovations, and we don't let our PMs do any renovations. If there's a maintenance call, no problem. But if we're spending $20,000, $200,000, we're spending big bucks. I personally, because that's part of what I do for our team, I work directly with our general contractor, and we work everything out, and all of it goes to, through the GC team, not the PM team.
Okay. So I bet a lot of that kind of comes from your background in house flipping, where like you can.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
And we just, I think for us too, it's like when we were getting going, when we started the smaller properties, we didn't have a third party PM. And we just kind of got used to doing certain things a certain way. And so as we grew, again, we wanted to bring in the third party PMs to relieve some of the time and stress on us. But we just didn't want to give control of some of the really important items, particularly when raising money with investors, right? We have to look them in the eye and say, hey, we're being good stewards of the capital. So there's just certain things we want to just really keep a tight grip on.
That makes sense.
Cool.
Makes sense.
And then, sorry, one more question before we pivot from this point. What softwares or programs are you using on the property management side? Like, are you using like an Outfolio or a Rent Cafe, or what do you guys?
So I love this question, by the way, because we were all messed up recently on this whole software thing, right? So we have multiple PMs for the multiple properties, right? Geographically, because we have properties in Bakersfield, we have properties in Sacramento, and we're the Central Valley guys. So we're kind of looking in between, looking at deals in Fresno and whatever. The point is, the way we were set up was our PMs in Bakersfield and Sacramento, separate offices, separate companies, they each had Appfolio, but they're different Appfolio systems. And we would just get like an owner report at the end of the month. But then we were using QuickBooks for all of our accounting. So we'd have to get their, reports, and then we'd have to balance it into our QuickBooks. And then we were using this other portal called InvestNext to manage all of our investors, where they get paid distributions and everything. So we've got Appfolio, QuickBooks, InvestNext, and then we've got master budgets that we were doing in Google Sheets. And so we had all these programs going on, and it was getting to a point where every single month or every quarter when we were doing our reports, it was just a lot of like madness, like things weren't lining up. We were having to stay at the office till midnight, just with stacks of paper on the desk and a big, big calculator, like it's 1980, like just like punching stuff in, going, where's the $300 here? We can't find it, like stupid stuff like that. So what we decided to do was sort of take control of the system and go to one system that could just integrate everything. And so we looked at Appfolio, and then we ended up looking at Yardi, and sort of quickly realized that Yardi was the big software in the space. And it's a little bit more expensive, but the nice thing is that now we're going to kill everything else we use. We're going to control, one master Yardi account at our corporate level. All of our properties will be in there, instead of the PMs controlling their own accounts. And then if they quit or get fired, we don't have access to that data other than reports they've sent us. Now we can swap PMs in and out because we own all the data. And so it's going to be a whole different scenario. But we literally just signed up with them like probably 2 weeks ago, and now we're in the throes of all the onboarding and all that fun stuff, which is a whole nother thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, Yardi is pretty good too, especially once you're up and running, because I know it makes like accounting a lot more seamless. So definitely probably alleviating you guys in that area.
Yeah, and they have like 3 different. So they have like Yardi. I think it's Yardi Breeze, Yardi Breeze Premier, and then it's like Yardi Voyager's their big one that like you really start getting to like where it ties everything. So we probably over-engineered the system, frankly, for our relatively medium-sized portfolio right now. We've gone with kind of a big system, but the nice thing is that now we can kind of grow into it. So when we go from that $12 million of assets to the 150 million, we don't have to look for a new system. In theory, at some point, if we can get to the big boy club, the B club, the billions, we might have to have a couple new systems. But for right now, at least we know near term, Yardi seems like it can do everything we want to do.
Cool. That's awesome. So the next question we didn't want to pivot to was, so how many investors do you guys have so far that have joined your guys' syndicate or syndication?
We have about 3 dozen between the 2 syndications that we've completed. Yeah, about 3 dozen.
Cool. And then, so how was it that you went about, like locating these people?
Yeah, so it was a mixed bag. A lot of friends and family. And then on our second one, because we were able to advertise, we were able to put things on social media. We were able to do email blasts. We actually met some investors at a couple of events we went to. So we went to a Rod Khleif event in Denver, if you know who Rod Khleif is, but he's big in the multifamily space. Met some investors there. It's kind of been a lot of everything, right? I think it's like anything, if it's sales or raising capital or whatever you're doing, you got to have a bunch of different lines in the water. LinkedIn's been good. Actually, a lot of people we know do really well on LinkedIn as far as fundraising. We're kind of just starting to scratch the surface on that, but LinkedIn's a great place to raise capital. So it just kind of, it depends, I think, on it's sort of situational on if you're a syndicator, where you want to lean into and spend your time, but they all kind of work if you push it.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's cool. The next thing is like, how do you guys build trust with your investors, or how do you maintain the trust with your investors, periodically or ongoing?
Yeah. So one of the things we do is we're very transparent up front, first of all. So before we even buy a deal, there's plenty of opportunity for them to come out to the property with us during inspections. We usually do at least a second visit before we close on the property. The investors are very involved up front with a huge data dump and a number of internal webinars we'll do with them to where we go over, all the due diligence, the contract, the legal. We really kind of spend a lot of time up front to make sure everybody feels comfortable with that. And then, of course, we'll do one-off meetings if people want to do those. But once we get into the deals, so our typical program is we do an investor update every 90 days. So every 3 months, they're going to get a distribution from us, which is probably the most important part. They're going to get some cash in their account, a little piece of the rent that the building's spinning off. And then with that, they're also going to get a report, which will have a number of things in it. So the report usually has the operating bank statements for the LLC that controls the property. It has a P&L. It has a balance sheet. It has our master budget, which shows, hey, we wanted to make on this property 80 grand this quarter. We made 75,000 or we made 98,000, whatever it is, itemizes everything that we were tracking. And then it just kind of gives them the opportunity from there to obviously ask questions and get with us if there's anything they still want to know.
Cool. That's awesome.
So, how many partners do you have?
So I have 3 partners. So the name of our company is BCGK. I'm the B, I'm Brandon. And then we got Chuck, Greg, and Kevin.
Okay. So do you guys also put money into these deals now that you're syndicating?
We do. Yeah, we try to put, it varies. We try to put, $150,000 to $300,000 in each of our deals. So like for example, use a round number. If there's 4 of us and we want to put 200 grand into a deal, maybe we're raising $2 million and we're like, hey, let's see if we can put 10% of that in ourselves. So we're going to put 200 grand, which is like 50 grand each. So again, it sort of depends, but so far each deal we've been around those numbers.
Okay, that's cool.
So we've touched a little bit on how you've been able to, pay out investors. We did want to dig a little bit deeper into that. Like, what's the average rate of return an investor can expect being in your syndication?
So with what we're doing, first of all, you kind of zoom out, right? There's lots of syndicators that buy properties like in the Midwest and in Texas and Florida and different places where it's probably a little bit more cash flow driven. Right. California, one of the big benefits is you get a lot of appreciation relatively fast. But, we wanted to design a program to where we could still get the investors paid along the way. And so we kind of have a little bit of a hybrid where it's not, they're not getting 10% cash on cash, but we're getting most of our deals, we're starting getting about 5-6% right out of the gate. And then our goal is as we start value adding, remodeling units, getting the rents up, then during the time that they're in that deal, that 5 or 6% maybe goes up to 7%, 8%, something like that. So effectively, if we hold the deal for 4 or 5 years, maybe they've gotten on average 7, 8% on their money along the way, right? These payments every 90 days. And then we sell it for the big appreciation. And that's when the catch up happens. And our whole thing on that is typically we want to 2 to 3x their money. So if someone puts $100,000 with us, we'd like to hand them back somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 when we sell the property. And in the meantime, they're getting that little drip every 90 days, which just kind of validates the investment and keeps a little cash flowing.
Right. That's cool. So, yeah, I had a question just now. So you mentioned that you're not necessarily looking for 10% cash on cash return right out the gate, but what other metrics are you guys like looking for when you're evaluating your deals? I heard you mention value add a little. Is that what you're typically looking for? Something that you can increase the value of?
Yeah, I mean, given that we're very experienced, as mentioned earlier, with the construction and the renovations, it's really a kind of a sweet spot for us, and we enjoy doing it. We kind of feel like we have it down to a little bit of a science. So we look for deals that are, vintage, 60s, 70s, year built, right? You're talking about properties where, it's probably owned by someone who's had it for 20 or 30 years and they haven't put a lot of money into it. And we really look for the spread on the rents. So, for example, the deal that I'm looking at right now that we're trying to buy, this property, it fits almost that category to a T. It's built in the 60s. The average rents for the property are about $1,300 a month. The property's been very neglected. And so even though I'm sure the tenants there enjoy paying $1,300, not $2,000, which is closer to the market rents, the property's kind of fallen apart in a lot of ways. Not structurally. Structurally, it's a great property, but just needs windows, old crummy siding, needs roof repairs. Nothing's upgraded on the inside. Old crummy carpet and Formica countertops, right? And so that's sort of our quintessential deal where we'll come into that deal and we'll start fixing, the exterior up. We'll start making some major capital improvements, take care of the roofs and drainage. And then we'll run a interior remodel program where we'll bring those interiors from, Brady Bunch 1960s to the 2024s to bring them into this century, and we'll lose some tenants in that. I mean, you guys know, you'll shake things up. So some tenants will say, hey, I'm glad you're making it nice, but I enjoy $1,300 rents. And that's no problem. We'll give them time to vacate,
Okay.
And actually, truthfully, a lot of times it's not like we're getting rid of tenants. We're kind of letting people decide if they want to vacate, and the ones that do, we start doing the renovation program. But the point is, we've also found that a lot of people, when you start renovating these properties, they actually come to us and say, hey, we're so glad you did this because this guy's been a slumlord and we've been living in this atmosphere that we kind of hate, and we didn't want to move because maybe they need to be there geographically or whatever it is.
Right.
And so anyway, we've had a lot of people that'll actually step up and pay that higher rent happily once we put all that money into it.
That's cool.
So some questions on this side. Now, when you're dealing with, and I know it's kind of like, I'm sure it's territory you don't like to be in, but when you're dealing with possible tenants that, may need to move out and you give them, some time, how much time do you usually give them? And then, what are like the escalating factors in getting them out once that time has expired?
Yeah, I would say usually we would give people, 60, even 90 days. If they've been there a long time, our goal is not to come in and try to kick anybody out of a property, right? If they're a good person, they're paying the rent and they need to stay there for a little bit, that's totally fine by us. But if somebody's kind of the conclusion that, hey, I do need to move or I do want to move, I'm not going to stay here, I don't want to, go into one of these new properties, one of the new units, we'll usually give them about 60 to 90 days. Okay. And back to your other question, what do we do if they don't, or if they're dragging? We just try to work with them. Again, everything's situational. We really try not to, let's put it this way, if somebody's being malicious, right? Not paying the rent, beating things up, causing problems, that's when we take a different approach to how we handle things. If somebody just needs a little help, and they're just kind of trying to figure things out, then, we're always going to approach that differently.
All right. Do you guys ever do like any cash for keys or not so much?
So we looked at it at one time. We were looking at it, one of the deals we didn't buy, but this was last year. And actually, I found this guy here in LA, and I forget his name off the top of my head. If I remember it, I'll pop it on here. But he runs a program here in LA, and that's exactly what he does: is cash for keys for other real estate investors. And I kind of figured, I could go knock on the doors, or one of my partners could go knock on the doors and make offers to everybody and see who wanted to move if we had bought this deal. But when I found him, which I kind of came into knowing who he was through, he was on another podcast I was watching, and I was like, man, that's a great program. And so I had a long conversation with him, and had we bought that property, he was going to go there, knock on all the doors. I think he was going to offer them a few $1,000s to start, but we were going to agree on like what a ceiling was for how much relocation funds he could give. And apparently he does this all day long for other clients. So it was very interesting idea.
Wait, so run me through this a little. I don't know if I've heard of this. So he'll put up the money for the cash for keys, and then he gets the return on the back end, or?
Well, no. So we still got to pay him up front, the cash. But basically, it's almost like if he says, hey, Brandon, to get these people out on average, it's going to cost you $10,000, whatever the number. Let's use that round number. But he says, hey, I'm going to go try to offer them, $4,000 or $5,000 to start, because for some people that might be fine, and maybe they were going to leave anyway. And some people were like, fuck, I was going to give my notice tomorrow anyway, and now I'm getting $4,000 or $5,000, right? So we started at a certain number, and then there was an incentive for him. So anything he saved us, he got a percentage of. So he was incentivized to try to keep those. It was like, I think it was maybe 15 or 20% that he was going to get on that spread of whatever he saved us, that we'd write him a check at the end. So he'd get that bonus at the end, basically.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I ever heard of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'll shoot you guys after this his info. I wish I knew it offhand, because I never ended up working with them, but I've got it on my phone somewhere. But it's a very interesting business model.
Okay. And the last question, I know that you're the head of acquisitions. What has been the most creative deal that you've been a part of so far?
Well, I'll tell you, they're having to start getting more creative, because sellers are not budging right now. In general, if you don't have to sell, you're probably not selling right now. It's actually kind of let's face it, it's a bad time to sell, right? Like if you're sitting on a piece of commercial property or an apartment building and it's making you all kinds of money and you have a nice loan on it, there's no way you're putting it on the market right now to get beat up by a buyer that's having to pay 6-7% interest rates, right? So that's the challenge. And the thing is that the banks are not taking these properties back. The banks know that there's all kinds of bad loans on their books right now, but they don't want to be the next Silicon Valley Bank or whatever it may be, right? So they're kind of just looking the other way on a lot of this stuff and hoping that it kind of works itself out. And so it's very difficult to find deals. I mean, for us, we're only looking in the Central Valley right now, and that's Bakersfield, Fresno, and Sacramento. Now there's some smaller cities like Modesto and Tulare and some, filler cities in between, right? There's a lot of nice little suburbs of Sacramento. But it's basically that. And so when you figure that we're just looking for, say, 40 unit and larger apartment complexes that have value add factor, and just in that area, I mean, I spend months sometimes looking for deals, and there's always a few little things here and there, but it's not like I can just go out tomorrow and find 10 places to write an offer on.
Right.
So, we've started getting creative in the sense of just how we try to find the deals, which is obviously like, networking with brokers, trying to send letters out to owners just directly, or somehow get their numbers through title companies and skip tracing. Yeah. And it's been interesting. So far every deal we've bought from a broker. Mm-hmm. So we actually haven't had success going directly yet. But I think we're going to have to continue to explore those other options, because it's just, it's hard to find anything right now.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you guys did any, it's part of your syndication, if you've done any like seller financing. So that's something you guys are open to eventually?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So a couple of the deals that we've looked at, there was some talks of seller financing, the seller leaving some cash on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been my experience that most of these sellers, it takes a unique seller to want to be creative. And I know they're out there because you guys know, and I know there's all kinds of people in our space that are like, I just bought this with seller financing, right? So those deals happen all the time.
Right.
But again, in my little area that I'm looking for this particular like unit count, when you get down to it, a lot of these guys just don't want to do that. And so, or if they do, they want unrealistic terms. Like, yeah, I'll seller finance you, but put half down and I want to stay in the first position and I want a 7% interest rate. And you're like, okay, well, why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's something we looked at. I mean, there's another deal I'm looking at right now. For example, this guy got 102 apartments approved, and he only built 20. So he's got a piece of land where all the infrastructure's in, and everything's already approved for the other 82 units. Yeah. But he only has the 20 that he built. And so I'm trying to buy that from him right now, and it's not going very well because he wants too much. But I'm trying to also be a little creative. And so what I told him was, I said, hey, I don't want to own land that I can't build on like you. Like, basically I said, no offense, but I said, you've been sitting on this land, you haven't done anything with it. And so I said, our whole goal would be to come in and phase this, right? So we're going to buy the existing 20 and maybe build the next 20, and now we'll have 40. And then, when that next 20 gets to be at a certain phase, either C of O or maybe a little before C of O, we'll break ground on the following phase. So I basically proposed to him hey, we'll pay you, I think he wants 13 or 14 million, but I basically said hey, we'll pay you seven something or whatever now. And that gets us the 20 units plus the next phase of land. And then every so often we'll take down the next chunk at some pre-negotiated, rates. And so I thought it sounded pretty good. And we went through this whole exercise, and he came back and said, nope, I don't want to come off my price, and I'm not going to finance you on the land. And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe there's a reason you've been sitting on this for 3 years. I said, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know why he paused the work? Did he run out of money, or why? Yeah. Why did he not continue?
I'm not totally sure. What I've gotten from these guys is that he's an older gentleman, kind of a one-man show. Maybe it's too large of a project for him at the end of the day. He did go through a lot of the hard part of getting it approved with the city and finally breaking ground on the first phase. But it sounds like he just kind of got burned out on the whole thing. And at the end of the day, I'm looking at it going, well, damn, that's a beautiful property, in terms of you get it up to the 102 units, all brand new, sitting there. It's a fantastic, deal that we'd love to have in our portfolio. But I think for him, it's just not likely to get to the finish line. And, you'd think because of that, he would be open to helping us do something creative on how we take it down. But, some people just are hard headed, and you got to just wait it out. You got to just say, okay, no problem. I'm a buyer if you come to your senses, but if not, it's all good.
He sounds like the type of dude you just gotta touch him a couple of months at a time.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, come back to him. So.
Yep. Check in. Yeah, I'm still here. How's it going? Yeah.
Cool. All right, Brandon. It was great talking to you, man. We really enjoyed this. But also, can you please let the viewers know where they can reach you and potentially invest in the syndication?
Yeah, so you guys can reach me on Instagram, and it's Mr. Locaso. You can also go to YouTube. It's the same thing, Mr. Locaso. That's LOCASCIO. And you can go to our website, BCGK Property.com, and you can get information there about upcoming syndications and deals we're working on. You can request to join an upcoming webinar or to have somebody contact you. And appreciate you guys following along.
Yeah, no problem. Though we'll make sure to have all that info in the show note. But one more last thing before we go. I actually didn't tell you we were going to do this, but every episode we have a B for the day. And the B for the day is just pretty much that is something you need to be in order to achieve some sort of goal. So whether it's they want to be a real estate syndicator like yourself, or if they just want to be an investor, or if they just want to achieve more goals in life, can you give us a B for the day?
A B for the day.
Yeah, a little on the spot, man. Sorry.
No, it's good. I mean, I would just say, to do anything you want to do as far as hitting your goals and to be what you want to be. I know it sounds cliche, but you got to be willing just to kind of tune out the noise. You got to be so stubborn and passionate with where you're trying to go that you just don't care what anybody else has to say. You care, but you know, you kind of just tune out the negativity, you tune out the opinions. Like if you know where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, like that's what I do. I get up every day and I'm just like, okay, I some days I'm on the hamster wheel. Don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm running in place, but I get up and I come out swinging again. And I think for me, it's always served me well that, you know, I just don't let anybody get in my head. I'm my own, you know, I'm in tune with my thoughts and I just try to control the brain. It's an important thing to do. And you just keep running.
Hey,
Nice. I like that.
like that.
Thanks a lot, Brandon.
Thanks, though.
Appreciate it.
So you heard Brandon. Be who you want to be you, and be uncommon.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Be uncommon. Guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best.
Awesome. It was great,
Bye, guys.
Brandon.
Boom.